The M60 General Purpose Machine Gun is one of the most iconic weapons of the Vietnam War. Even people who know very little about the conflict have seen the images. Young soldiers standing in the jungle, sweat-soaked uniforms, ammunition belts crisscrossed over their chests, and the long silhouette of the M60 hanging from their shoulders like something straight out of a war movie. But those photographs only tell part of the story, because behind that image was a much darker reality. While the M60 earned admiration for its firepower and became a symbol of American infantry in Vietnam, it also became a curse for many of the men who carried it into combat. And for some of them, it was the last weapon they ever touched. To understand why the M60 inspired both respect and fear, you have to go back to the end of World War II. During the war, American troops had come face to face with German machine guns and quickly realized just how advanced they were. The Germans had embraced a revolutionary idea, the general purpose machine gun. Instead of designing a different weapon for every battlefield role, they created a single machine gun that could serve as a light machine gun, a sustained fire weapon, or a mounted gun, depending on how it was used. Two German weapons stood out above the rest. The MG-42, famous for its terrifying rate of fire and quick-change barrel, and the FG-42, which was lighter, more compact, and designed for airborne troops. The MG-42 delivered overwhelming firepower, while the FG-42 offered portability and better handling. After the war, American weapons designers wanted the best of both worlds. They wanted a machine gun that was lighter and easier to carry than older crew-served weapons, but still capable of delivering sustained, suppressive fire. So they combined elements from both German designs, adapted the MG-42's feeding system, merged it with the general layout of the FG-42, added American engineering choices, and chambered it in the new standard 7.62 NATO round. The result was the M60. On paper, the M60 looked like the perfect solution. It was designed to replace older weapons like the Browning M1919 and serve as the backbone of infantry firepower. It fired from an open bolt, used belt-fed ammunition, and could be mounted on bipods, tripods, vehicles, helicopters, and boats. Its cyclic rate was around 600 rounds per minute, far slower than the MG-42. But that slower rate made it more controllable and more accurate, while also conserving ammunition. Weight-wise, the M60 came in at around 24 pounds without ammunition. For a machine gun, that was considered light. But numbers on paper did not reflect reality in Vietnam. In the jungle, under extreme heat and humidity, with mud, leeches, and thick vegetation everywhere, that weight felt far heavier than advertised. The gunner typically carried around 300 rounds of ammunition on his body, with another belt already loaded into the weapon. His assistant and ammo bearer carried even more, often splitting 1,500 to 1,800 rounds between them. Running out of ammunition was not an option, because the M60 was the squad's primary source of firepower. When contact was made, the squad depended on that gun to keep them alive. The 7.62 NATO round gave the M60 a major advantage in Vietnam. In dense foliage, smaller 5.56 rounds, fired by the M16, often deflected off branches and leaves. The heavier 7.62 round punched through vegetation and cover, making it far more effective in jungle combat. But that effectiveness came at a steep cost. Being the M60 gunner was widely considered one of the most dangerous jobs in an infantry unit. While doctrine said the weapon should be operated by a three-man team, Vietnam rarely followed doctrine. Jungle terrain, sudden ambushes, and chaotic firefights meant the M60 often became a one-man weapon. The gunner carried it, fired it, and moved it, while the rest of the squad did their best to keep him supplied with ammunition. Early in the war, soldiers carried ammo belts slung across their chests. It looked intimidating and made for iconic photographs, but it was impractical. The exposed belts collected dirt, bent easily, and snagged on branches, leading to feeding failures at the worst possible moments. Veteran units quickly adapted, using Claymore mine bags, radio packs, and improvised rigs to protect ammunition and feed it more reliably into the gun. Vietnam combat was brutal and unpredictable. Firefights were often sudden, close, and violent. M60 gunners fired from the bipod, from the hip, and sometimes while moving. A strong and experienced gunner could advance while firing, keeping enemy heads down and breaking ambushes. The M60 pinned down enemy positions, allowed squads to maneuver, and often made the difference between survival and disaster. But the moment that gun opened fire, it also turned the gunner into the most obvious target on the battlefield. Enemy fighters quickly learned to identify the sound of the M60 and prioritize killing the man carrying it. Just like officers and radio operators, M60 gunners were prime targets. Snipers focused on them. Ambushes were designed to eliminate them first. Once the M60 was silenced, the rest of the squad became far more vulnerable. US training manuals did not sugarcoat this reality. Some warned that an M60 gunner's life expectancy in a firefight could be measured in seconds after pulling the trigger. Gunners were taught to change positions constantly, use cover aggressively, and rely heavily on their squad for protection. And as dangerous as the role already was, the weapon itself did not always help. Like the early M16, the first M60s in Vietnam suffered from serious reliability issues. The weapon was highly vulnerable to dirt, carbon buildup, and fouling. In an environment where everything was wet, muddy, and filthy, this was a major problem. If the gun was not meticulously cleaned and maintained, it could jam without warning. Barrel changes were another major weakness. Although the M60 was designed with a quick-change barrel system, the execution left much to be desired. The front sight and folding bipod were attached directly to the barrel, meaning every barrel change also removed the sights. This made maintaining zero nearly impossible. Worse still, there was no proper carrying handle. Gunners had to use asbestos gloves or wrap the barrel in cloth to remove it, often under intense pressure. Serious burns were common, sometimes putting gunners out of action entirely. Early barrel latch designs created even more danger. The locking lever could snag on brush, partially releasing the barrel. In some cases, the gun would appear assembled but fail to fire because the barrel was not properly locked. Discovering that problem while under fire was a nightmare scenario. The M60 also lacked a gas regulator, meaning there was no way to adjust the weapon as it became fouled. Carbon buildup slowed the gas piston, leading to malfunctions ranging from failures to extract to the dreaded runaway gun, where the weapon continued firing uncontrollably. The only way to stop it was to break or twist the ammo belt or wait until the ammunition ran out. Other issues piled on: cracked pistol grips, fragile trigger housings, and a safety mechanism that worked opposite to the M16 confused soldiers, switching between weapons under stress. Many gunners simply left the safety off if they expected contact. Because of the danger and extra weight, the M60 was often assigned to the newest or lowest-ranking soldier in the squad. Few volunteered for a role that combined extreme risk with relentless physical strain. In inexperienced hands, the M60 was unforgiving, which contributed to its mixed reputation early in the war. Some soldiers trusted it with their lives, while others dismissed it as unreliable junk. Despite all its flaws in the right hands, the M60 could be devastating. One of the most famous examples came when Marine Lance Corporal Richard Pittman earned the Medal of Honor after grabbing an M60 from a fallen comrade during a fierce ambush. Under heavy fire, Pittman charged forward, firing from the hip, knocking out enemy machine gun positions at close range. He then lay down and continued firing, cutting down wave after wave of advancing enemy troops. When his ammunition ran out, he picked up an enemy weapon and kept fighting. His actions saved countless lives and cemented the M60's place in combat history. Stories like that helped build the weapon's legend, even as the military quietly worked to correct its flaws. Over time, improved versions like the M60E3 and E4 incorporated lessons learned in Vietnam. But during the mid-1960s, the average infantryman did not have access to those improvements. He carried what he was issued in one of the harshest combat environments imaginable. In fact, the US Marine Corps was initially so skeptical of the M60's early performance that they resisted replacing older weapons, like the Browning automatic rifle. Eventually, though, most units adopted the M60 and learned how to work around its quirks. By the end of the war, the M60 had become inseparable from Vietnam itself. Alongside the Huey helicopter, the M16 rifle, and the AK-47, it became one of the defining weapons of the conflict. The image of an infantryman burdened with ammunition belts and an M60 remains one of the most enduring symbols of the war. It was powerful, iconic, and deadly, but it was never forgiving. And for many of the men who carried it, the price of that firepower was far higher than anyone had expected. If you want to see more stories like this, you know where to find them. And if not, I'll see you in the next one anyway.